Good afternoon, everyone. We're experiencing a century class solar minimum. Tony Phillips, Pierce Corbin. Next 20 years going to get colder and colder. Oh wait, 11 more scientists and astrophysicists. Grand solar minimum getting cold. One of the longest periods since 1849 of sun-spotless days in a row. And the direct effects, record snow across Europe, multiple feet. And Northern Ireland, coldest temperature ever recorded for September, as well as strange lightning sighted in our atmosphere. And just a quick word from this video's sponsor. You know, the world and life in front of us has never looked so uncertain as it does now. Across the U.S., people are being paralyzed into indecision, flustered, shutting down, and avoiding the issues, the money issues. But as bleak as that might look, there may be a silver or even a gold lining. If you worked with a company or a firm for years before COVID, you could have a 401k sitting around gathering dust, or even an old IRA that's working for your old company when it could be working for you. It could be thousands of dollars. Find out more about unlocking your own hidden treasure with gold, silver, or precious metals-backed IRAs. Call the Noble Gold team at 877-646-5347. And if that's not incentive enough, Noble Gold is giving away the U.S. Mint's own solid silver 5-ounce $1 Apollo 11 moon landing coin with each qualifying gold or silver IRA. And the link's in the description box below. And to put things into perspective moving through this story, here on September 28th, we're back to 2 days in a row with no sunspots. And you might say, whoop-de-doo. But then there were only 4 days with sunspots, and then we go back, and there were 32 days heading into solar maximum with no sunspots. Significance of this puts it right on the chart of one of the longest streaks of no sunspots since 1849. And if you do look at the chart of periods with sunspotless days over 30 days, most of them are heading into the minimum of the 11-year cycle, not ramping up to maximum. Such a strange outlier. Solar cycle 25 is going to be incredibly weak. Solar cycle 26 might bring us into this full-blown 2,000 to 3,600 year cold period. But starting off with smaller cycles on the 400-year iteration, and even up to the century mark here, Dr. Tony Phillips, headline a century class solar minimum. He also is picking up that the absurd amount of low solar activity is going to be ushering in cold temperatures. So when we go into this winter in the Northern Hemisphere, you're going to be looking for at least 100 and 120 year cold records being smashed on a daily basis for months and months, entire season actually. And Pierce Corbin talking about the mini ice age accelerating, and for the next 20 years it's going to get colder and colder. I had a chance to speak with Pierce in Glastonbury, along with Sadie Adams and Mark Meadows, where we were disrupted by Extinction Rebellion. That's in the playlist below. And as I started to dig into forecasts, now there's 11 scientific predictions for astrophysicists and scientists saying, you know what, we are headed for a deep cooling period. And that should ring alarm bells right there. And a direct equation on the amount of food that will not be harvested should go right along with this. And that's the main thing we should be talking about right now, is the lack of food production that accompanies these colder times. So Dr. Buzimatov, he's the director at the Pulkovo Observatory, and he's looking at either solar cycle 26 or 27 into a brand new little ice age, equivalent or colder than Maunder minimum. Valentina Zarkova also stating 2020 is when it began, and it's going to roll through 2053, terrestrial drops in temperature that are going to shake our world. Bianchini and Scafetta looking at a prolonged grand solar minimum 2020 to 2045. McCran looking at 60-year cycles in Earth's temperature differences, reaching the trough of cool from 2030 to 2040. Hence the name of my channel, Adapt 2030, because we have to adapt our food growing strategies before 2030 to get our world through this. Now Sanchez and Sesma Talking about a super grand solar minimum, prolonged multi-century cooling period that's going to reset society to the core. And Morner, also 2030, new grand solar minimum. Jenstedt Solheim, sunspot minimum back to the Dalton minimum, total solar irradiance decreasing 2025 to 2050. Fleming talks about solar magnetic field strength like Valentina Zarkova, bringing us into a grand solar minimum centered at 2030, which would be about 2020's start period if we're going to center it. And it's just baffling with all these top-level people coming out saying that we're going to go into a prolonged cool period that's going to disrupt global agriculture based on history over the last 6,000 years, that nobody's talking about this or refuses to talk about it. Maybe it's just too scary for the human race to realize what's about to happen. And it's happening currently. It's already begun. So the international sunspot number, I'll let you, the visuals do it for you. So since 1960, the high in sunspot numbers, and realize from 2020 forward, that is going to be lower than all the other solar cycles preceding it. So what do you think would happen with Earth's temperatures as the solar cycle goes to somewhere around 50 to maybe 75 sunspots average for the entire cycle? It's going to bring us right back into a 400-year cooling period at the bare minimum. Fingerprints of the grand solar minimum, if you're unaware: economic collapse, food prices spiking 7x with the food unavailability and population migration. Happens every grand solar minimum. I'm starting to see a lot of that around the planet right now. And how would you control the masses knowing that they won't have enough food moving into the next couple of years? I might stop them from moving around the planet and control the food distribution areas and tell you when and where you're allowed to access food. Sound familiar? And just some anecdotal evidence of things happening right now. Catesbridge, Northern Ireland, coldest September temperature of all time. And this is what, the third coldest September temperature ever recorded, coming out of either Ireland, Scotland, Wales, or England in the last week and a half. 3.7 degrees Celsius below zero. For Fahrenheit, that puts it down around 25 degrees Fahrenheit. This early in the season, unheard of. Made the local news for sure because everybody experienced the cold, but then greater Europe, not a peep. But what did happen across Europe and the Alps, record snowfalls, September 26th, over 2 feet. Some snowdrifts were up to 7 feet in this event here. So let me take you through a few images coming off social media. And keep in mind, day prior, it was a green field, as you would consider alpine meadows coming into the late summer. Webcams up in Austria, Switzerland, France. And you can see how deep it is with the person on the right, snowblower there. And what's interesting is summer flowers still out while this snow covers the ski runs. Now the depth you need to cover all of the grass and earth happen in a single snowstorm. This is massive, and this is going to allow the ski resorts to open early. But in the southern hemisphere, the massive snowstorms allow the ski resorts to stay open later in Australia, with the most bizarre cold and wind weather fronts coming through into the spring already, southern hemisphere. So we're definitely seeing in both hemispheres now that there's anomalies happening. It's so in our faces now that this grand solar minimum has onset. Now we need to deal with the repercussions. And at the same time, you see how governments are controlling it across the planet. And another indicator of natural changes is in these grand solar minimums, we get more electrified skies. That's about an equalization of charge through our atmosphere as the sun and the earth try to equalize. Well, the crust is overcharged. It's going to try to, at any chance it gets, take this electricity and move it back toward the sun. Global electric circuit outbound. Here we are. Positive lightning. This is Puglia in Italy. And with the changes in our electric skies, I would also make a bold forecast that we're going to see petroglyphs on canyon walls coming to life in no less than 3 years. Plasma displays hanging in the skies, visible to your eyes. I wonder how that'll be explained away through the corporate media. And with all the changes, you will need to become more self-sufficient, grow some of your own food, come together with your communities. That's why I've started Homestead 2030, doing the exact same thing I'm saying we need to do. Getting a farm ready from scratch to show you that it can be done. That's over on Patreon/Adapt2030. I appreciate you watching the video. Hope you got something out of it. The changes are now here. It's your move.